Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Onside. And wow, what a 24 hours it's been. Uh, I have absolutely no idea what is going on. I think this morning I was under the impression that Caicedo was going to Liverpool, but I have it's mind-boggling what's been happening. I'm going to have to ask you, Uwais. You're going to have to explain to me exactly what is going on, where we at. But before we do that, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. It's Friday afternoon, Friday evening, an hour to go to the FPL deadline of the first week. Yeah, first game of the Premier League today, Burnley against Man City. But I'm doing good. It's been a long week, work-wise and what have you, but just ready for the weekend. Absolutely, bring on the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, but before we actually sort of bring on the Premier League, it's been an insane 24 hours. There's a number of things happening. I'm not exactly sure what's been confirmed, what's not been confirmed, where Kane is at, where Caicedo is at. So, OS, please explain not just to me, but I'm sure some of the viewers as well, exactly where we're at this moment in time on this crazy day.
It has been a crazy day, and I think I text you this morning that you've seen. I've been looking forward to this recording ever since the news broke about Harry Kane wavering potentially
Hmm.
around midnight. Sky Sports last night were reporting that he was leaning towards staying at Spurs after Bayern Munich had agreed a fee with Daniel Levy for the sale of Harry Kane. Let's cover the Harry Kane saga first. That actually seems relatively straightforward for the time being compared to the
Sort
Caicedo
of,
one
sort of. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for the time being. But yeah, Harry Kane, where are we? So last night, or even before last night, I guess there was a deal finally agreed. As we've been speaking about you for a number of weeks now, both parties, Spurs and Bayern Munich, have been in talks for quite some time, and both of us arrived at the conclusion that clearly there was a deal there to be
Hmm.
had if both parties are speaking. So I believe the deal that was agreed was worth around £85 million with some very achievable add-ons, let's say. So I think it comes pretty much close to, if not over the £100 million mark, which is what Daniel Levy was holding out for. I've long since been of the opinion, as you know, Yub, that Daniel Levy was always looking to sell.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think it was posturing with regards to him um, happy to let the player go on a leave, um, rather than kind of sell him domestically. I think if it came to it, I think he would have sold him domestically. You cannot let a prized asset leave your club for nothing. It's a very simple rule. I think it's normal business sense. If a player shows no signs that he's going to sign a contract, as you can see in Paris right now as well, you've got to be careful and you've got to look to obviously sell that player and make some sort of return, especially when you're dealing with the what I call the 1% of the one percenters in terms of footballing talent. So that's where we're at. Then at midnight, it would seem that Harry Kane, there were some reports that he was still uncertain whether or not he actually wanted to make this move to Bayern Munich, which for me, Ayub, and I just want to quickly get your thoughts on this before I kind of finish off. When I heard the reports that Harry Kane at midnight was still uncertain, Sky Sports News were reporting he was leaning towards staying. As much as I understand the human side of it, and I fully respect that, this has been a couple of months now in the making.
Hmm.
You would have thought that Bayern Munich, well, this is obvious. I mean, this is already agreed that he'd informed Daniel Levy quite early on. Ange Postecoglou's comments this afternoon pretty much confirmed that he told him that he'd be leaving as well, or that he was looking to move on. They've been preparing for this since that early conversation in the summer. So it wasn't, I mean, this by all parties was everything that Harry Kane wanted.
Hmm.
And yet, and that's why Bayern kept coming back to the table, right? If you know the player wants to come, you've got personal terms pretty much agreed. You keep coming back, and yet when the deal was finally struck, it seems there was some hesitancy on the player's part. It would seem, if you read
Hmm.
the reports. What's your thoughts on that? I find that quite, as much as I find it human, I find that quite bizarre. What's your thoughts just on that one particular aspect?
Garbage. Absolute garbage. You're absolutely right. I think it's not a move that suddenly sprung up uh, during the week. He's had ample time and he's a smart enough fella. where he's weighed up the pros, the cons, the family situation. So he's been absolutely, I think, clear in his mind as to what he wants to do. So I think there was, in my mind, it's I don't know whether it's just paper talk, whether it's Daniel Levy, perhaps again just putting a little bit of confusion on there, which might just increase, because I know there's something that just happened at the last minute where I won't sort of say Levy's stalling the deal, but certainly he's looking at perhaps squeezing a few extra million, that's classic Levy. He's a very shrewd businessman. But for me, it's absolute garbage, nonsense. This
Yeah,
was a move that I'm pretty certain that Harry Kane, once he's decided, yes, I want the move, then there was no issues. It was just maybe just ironing out the details. So I think it's rubbish.
exactly. And I'd heard some talk about how he didn't expect Bayern Munich to ultimately come up with the deal. That makes very little sense to me. This is professional sports at the highest level. What
Yeah.
happens is that Harry Kane speaks to Bayern Munich early on. He tells them that I'd like to come. Please speak to Spurs, try and get a deal over the line. And then he's obviously stayed quiet throughout the summer and let both parties do their work. So, of course, he's orchestrated this from the start. I don't have an issue with that. We know where his reputation and image lies in terms of the English media and what have you. He's very much a protected species, and that's fine.
He's a golden boy, isn't he? Really,
Yeah,
of English football. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, again, I don't say that in a very in a dismissive way. That's fine. That's par for the course when you're such an incredible player, a world class player, one of a few that England have. So yeah, in the end, I just found it surprising. Again, if the reports are true, that he was wavering, not sure. I get it. When it finally happens, you've got to make the call. You've got to cross that threshold. But I just found out, to your point, you're absolutely right, Ayub. It wasn't something that was just sprung up on him. It's something he's actually orchestrated. So there was that. You're right about the last minute talk. So this morning, Harry Kane was supposed to fly to Munich, I believe, from Stansted Airport, if the outlets are to be believed. And then there was some noise about whether or not he had been given permission to fly. Originally, there was some talk that he hadn't been given permission by Spurs because Spurs were still running through the contract proposal or the transfer proposal in terms of upfront fee terms, whatever it may be. Then Spurs had to confirm, no, he's got permission to fly to Munich. I mean, there was some skullduggery talk about whether or not to try and delay potentially him playing for Bayern Munich in the Super Cup tomorrow, I believe, against Leipzig to prevent him from winning a trophy. I don't believe in that. But you're right. We're not quite sure what those last minute shenanigans were about. I'm sure in the fullness of time that will come out. But anyway, as we understand, I think the flight was delayed. He's on his way to Munich. It looks like the deal's done. Ange Postecoglou's spoken about it in his press conference and spoke about it with a great deal of humility and dignity, I thought. But he made it very clear. Conversations were had with Harry Kane from the start of the summer, and they've been preparing for life without Harry Kane. It seems like now, finally, the deal's going to be done. I think Bayern Munich will be looking to unveil the player tomorrow, I imagine, or what have you. It's hard to see how this deal doesn't get done. Don't forget, he's been playing for Spurs in pre-season. There shouldn't be any issues with the medical. Bayern Munich finally land one of the world's best strikers, pretty much still at the peak of his powers. So that's where we're at. It looks like it's done. It was always going to get done if he wasn't going to sign a new contract at Spurs, which seems to be the case. And yeah, the Premier League loses arguably its most iconic marksman.
Absolutely. And on the point now, I mean, it's without it being confirmed, it's as good as confirmed. So what's your thoughts now on Harry Kane at Munich? I mean, what obviously he's gone there to win tournaments and win trophies. But how do you think he'll fare in the German league?
Without speculating too much about the psychological side of things, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, Ayub. I think when a player of his ilk is at a club where clearly there's a good chance he may never win, a competition. You would argue if he plays at Spurs for another 3-4 years, there's the chance of a domestic trophy, domestic cup. Let's say you go on a cup run, especially with replays being removed or what have you. But irrespective of that, you feel a domestic trophy might come. The league, a Champions League, that looked far-fetched, at least in the short term, for Spurs. I think I've mentioned this, that I think some of the near misses he's had for England as well. Semi-finals of the World Cup, then the European Championship final against Italy, then another quarter-final against France, where again he had a huge moment, a heartbreak moment, blazing that penalty over against France. I think, without again speculating too much, I think that plays heavy on the heart to some extent, because you've got a lot of focus and scrutiny on Harry Kane, great striker, but there is this slight stigma following him around that he's a great individual player, bagging lots of individual records, destined for the record to break that Premier League scoring record. And I think some of that weighs on him to the extent of where he feels like, I'm going to have to make this move. There's a certain inherent pressure where he feels, even from externally, to say, look, I think I have to make this move because I'm not seen in the same light as some of the other world greats to some extent. He's not playing for an elite club at European level. I think Bayern Munich are definitely one of the heavyweights in European football. This way, he, I guess, maintains some reputation with Spurs fans because he heads out of the country. I think he'll fare fine. They'll win the Bundesliga, you would imagine. They've won 10 in a row. That won't be the challenge per se, especially with Dortmund, their nearest rivals, losing Bellingham, and Bayern Munich strengthening this summer, plus Tuchel with a fresh start with a full season. What he'll be looking to land is the Champions League. That will kind of put his name in history, so to speak, and will I guess validate the move. I think he'll do fine. He'll score goals. He's the kind of player, in my opinion, would score goals anywhere. His game is suited to all leagues. He can drop deep. He's a marksman, great shot, left foot, right foot, wants to score. He's selfish in scoring. I think you need that sometimes at the highest level in the final third. So I think it'll be absolutely fine. Question is, will he be back? I think at some point he will be. And I think if he does manage to achieve some of his targets, if they do manage to land a Champions League, which isn't beyond the realms of possibility, let's be very clear here, I think that return may well be sooner rather than later, because if he does achieve a Champions League triumph with Bayern Munich, there's nothing else to achieve. Yes, the experience of living in another country and what have you, but when you're 47 goals, I should say, short of Alan Shearer's record, you'd like to think he may wish to return maybe, I don't know, in 2 years, maybe 3 years at a push, and come and break that record. It was an absolute dead cert he was going to break that record if he stayed in England. Now it's probably, I'd say it's probably 40% chance, 50% chance that he breaks it. So just because he's probably going to spend a good few years at Bayern, you would think, at least 2, most likely 3. So, and then injuries, age, form, a lot of variables come in. So I think he'll be fine. I think he'll do great for Germany, great for Bayern Munich in Germany. And I think, I like it when English players move abroad as well. I think it's interesting to see how they fare in other leagues. I'm keen to see how Bellingham fares at Real Madrid. So I think he'll be fine. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. He's a world-class player. He's moving from the best league in the world to a league that is 2 or 3 notches down from the Premier League. He's playing for the best side by a considerable margin, even though I suppose you can sort of say that they were run close last season, but they are considerably better than anybody else in the German league. So certainly in terms of what he's going to accomplish, what he's going to do, he's going to score plenty of goals. I think he'll want to be almost like a record breaker when he goes there. So I probably think he'll be looking at, right, what's the record number of goals scored in the Bundesliga? He'll go for that. I think you talked about the British record. I've got a feeling it might be 2 years that he'll spend in Germany. I think with the intention that if they do win the Champions League, absolutely mission accomplished. He'll probably perhaps talk about a move back to the Premier League, because I think the Shearer's record is on his mind. I mean, I've got to say I've got a tremendous amount of respect for him because of this move. I thought he was going to be Shearer 2.0. because I have no respect for Shearer, absolutely none whatsoever. I mean that. I mean, I he is
no respect.
he is an embarrassment. He is an embarrassment to the Premier League because all he was ever concerned about, Alan Shearer, was the goal scoring record.
Are you? Zero respect.
Absolutely zero.
Embarrassment. I mean, come on.
The man is an embarrassment because he's everything that I despise about certain sportsmen: selfishness.
He won the Premier League, are you?
He won the Premier League when he was, 24, 25. He was courted by the best club side in the world. Now, there's all sorts of stories that he explains. I mean, this is not a piece about Shearer, but certainly what I didn't want Kane to do is just be so obsessed with the goal-scoring record that he almost forgo winning trophies. And that's why I've got respect for him, because he's made that decision. Right, I don't want to be defined just as the leading goal scorer. I want to be defined by my trophy cabinet as well. So that's the reason why. You're not happy with that?
I'm not happy because there's the situation, the circumstances are entirely different. I mean, Alan Shearer made the decision to move to Newcastle, his hometown club, early on in terms of his goal scoring tenure. I mean, don't get me wrong, he was prolific at Blackburn Rovers, but he's also scored the majority of those goals, those 260 Premier League goals at Newcastle United. Whereas Kane's now making the decision when he's got that goal scoring record in sight. Now, you might argue that amplifies your respect for him even more, the fact that he's not too far from it. Again, I would argue Alan Shearer was going home, hometown club. He'd been abroad. Anyway, this is not an Alan Shearer topic, but we disagree fundamentally there. And for you to use the words embarrassment and no respect...
No, I will stick with that, because as I said, sport to me is about winning. That's really, if you're playing a team sport, what you're trying to do is win. Now, you can make the argument, which you do, that it's his boyhood club. It's his hometown, Newcastle. And they were there or thereabouts. So he's probably thinking, I'll make the difference. Mine is slightly different. As a professional sportsman, your intention, objective should be to be the best, play for the best team, win as many trophies.
So every single player on the transfer market this summer should be looking to go to Manchester City. That's what you're saying?
No. If you're a player that is being courted by Manchester City, then yes. If you have 2 or 3 clubs that are bidding for you, and one happens to be the best club either in the country or in the world, then it's a no-brainer, because you must, as a sportsman, it's like with working people. If the best company put an offer in, then really you should be saying, well, yes, this is the best company. I consider myself to be one of the best employees.
We're going off topic, but that makes no sense. If every player was to always go to the team that's winning, then that team would
you're not understand. No. What my point is Alan Shearer was the best striker in English football. At the time, Manchester United were the best club in England. Manchester United made 2 or 3 attempts to sign Alan Shearer. So the best team in the country is making a bid for the best player. Now, in my opinion, if you are the best player and the best team in the country is making a bid for you, they want you, then really there's no real...
Well, yeah, but if your hometown club, which isn't that far behind at the time, makes a bid to bring you back home, surely that's different. Anyway, I feel the ghost of Badge tapping me on my shoulder, so we should
probably... Let's move on. But in terms of Harry Kane, absolutely excellent. Yeah. I think a deserved mood for a wonderful, wonderful player, and I think he'll be an enormous success. Right, that's Harry Kane. That seems to be quite clear-cut, that move is as good as done. There's another move that was just... It was from the point that it was almost Chelsea's player, and suddenly Liverpool came onto the scene, and it looked, for all intents and purposes, that Caicedo was going to Liverpool, but I don't think that's the case anymore. What's your thoughts on that?
Incredible transfer saga. Incredible. We talked about this in the last podcast. I mentioned that Liverpool should consider going to Brighton and offering 100 million and getting that deal over the line. And lo and behold, the very next day, they did pretty much exactly that, because I don't think this was a long time in the works. And what I mean by that is I actually applaud Liverpool's strategy, and I want to give credit where it's due because I was fairly not critical, but quite questioning, let's say, some of the support that Jurgen Klopp's been getting from the board. And I think what's happened here, and I think it's a really interesting one, Ayub, where it's clear that Liverpool did not want to get involved in a bidding war with Chelsea early on this summer. This player in this summer transfer window was clearly Chelsea's to get. That was made very clear once Arsenal had their attempts rebuffed in January. Once Arsenal targeted Declan Rice to be their main signing this summer, it became very clear that Moises Caicedo was going to be a player that Chelsea were going to target. If you remember, Chelsea had Ugarte, who went to PSG, left them at the altar at the last minute. They may have bought Caicedo anyway, but Caicedo seemed like Chelsea's player to have. And I think all summer, Chelsea have felt that they are the only suitor for Caicedo in the transfer stakes. Hence, they've been obviously quite watchful in terms of what they've been bidding. I think there were bids of 75 million and then 80 million and what have you. I think what's happened is that Liverpool did not want to get involved in a public bidding war with Chelsea. That did not suit them for two reasons. One, Brighton were under no pressure to sell Caicedo early in the window. So all that would have meant is a public bidding war between two top-tier teams. I think Liverpool have had a word with Brighton, perhaps when they did the McAllister deal. They've got a good relationship. They've done deals from Lallana previously. They've sold James Milner to Brighton, or James Milner went on a free. But I think there was some, there's a healthy relationship there. And I think at that time they will have informed Brighton that, look, keep us informed. We don't really want to get into a public bidding war, especially with a club splurging the kind of cash that Chelsea are. Very difficult to gauge where they stand and what have you. And I think Liverpool probably made their position clear to Brighton to say, when that deal looks like it's getting close or not, let us know at a point when you're looking to get the deal over the line, and we'll most likely meet your requests. So I think both parties were probably happy with that. Again, Brighton under no real pressure to get the deal over the line. You're right, Ayub. It seemed like Chelsea's player. Then a couple of dominoes fell. One was, I think, around Wednesday, and I hope I got my timeline correct. Chelsea had a £48 million bid supposedly for Romeo Lavia, rejected by Southampton, or they'd at least put the bid in. I think it was rejected. Brighton submitted a midnight deadline, Thursday night, requesting all bids to be put forward and the fact that they were going to accept the highest bid. It's at that point, I imagine, they were in touch with Liverpool to say it's now or never, because Chelsea look like they may be, well, they're clearly playing silly buggers, but they may not have enough cash to make this deal a reality. And it's at that point Liverpool obviously submitted £111 million bid, if rumours are to be, whether that's straight up front or if that's full cash with some add-ons or what have you, we're not sure. But that bid was the highest bid. Brighton accepted that Thursday night, early Friday morning, and it was to be believed that Moises Caicedo was going to be on his way to Liverpool today, Friday afternoon, to do a medical and get the deal over the line. And no doubt we'd have probably had an announcement this evening. What seems to have then happened this afternoon with all this craziness that you speak of is that Caicedo seems to have informed Liverpool that he only wants Chelsea. And whether that's at the behest of Chelsea, because it seems that may well be the case, that Chelsea have told him, look, don't travel. We're trying to get this deal over the line again. We'll go back to Brighton and see if we can make the sums add up. Rumours are that Chelsea are offering players plus cash. You'll remember Brighton were keen to add Levi Colwill, who was on their books or on loan last year from Chelsea. That obviously wasn't a reality. Chelsea have just given him a new contract and keeping him for this next season and beyond. Brighton recently obviously sold Sanchez, the goalkeeper, to Chelsea as well. But it seems that now Brighton and Chelsea are looking to see if they can thrash out a deal. We've spoken how much of a tough customer in the realm of Daniel Levy that Tony Bloom is, who is the Brighton Supremo. So there's no doubt he'll be looking to say to Chelsea, well, it's 111 million. Why would I accept a bid when I've had an 111 million bid from a rival? So you've got this scenario where Liverpool's is the only bid that has been accepted. Chelsea, it seems, are struggling to stump up the cash. And I think when you read between the lines, you've got to remember, if Chelsea qualify for the Champions League, my understanding is because of this 3-year rolling record that FFP looks at, this year would be factored in, right? So they do have to look at somehow balancing their books. Although I think that accountant deserves a pay rise, whoever will be putting those books together in terms of the outgoings and incomings. But currently, as we speak, at UP, Friday evening, I think it's about 6 o'clock. There's a bit of an impasse. I'm not sure if Chelsea have put another bid forward. I think it's coming. Whether or not Brighton will accept, you would have to think it's going to have to be in the region of 111 million. Why would you accept anything less? Brighton don't have a horse in the race. They want to sell to the highest bidder. So it'll be really interesting. I find this is an incredible saga. I want to, in the second piece, you just cover where you think he should go, what your thoughts are in terms of his preferred choice of destination, which seems to be Chelsea. But this has been an incredible day in the Premier League, and this saga is just, I mean, it's exploded, hasn't it?
It's been absolute madness. I mean, we obviously work with a number of Liverpool fans, and I'm on various WhatsApp groups with Liverpool fans. And yesterday, I mean, there was one group that I'm on. I think there must have been close to about 500 messages when this story broke about Caicedo. So it's an incredible story. Apparently, I mean, this talk that he says that he's verbally committed to Chelsea because he's given his word. I mean, I don't know how true that is, but again, I mean, I used the word garbage before. I mean, in terms of morality, integrity, that doesn't exist in the world of football. So that don't even give me give me that. In terms of, I mean, one of the questions that you asked is where do I think he should go? I think the ideal move would be Liverpool. I mean, I've talked about if Caicedo. I mean, I said to a number of Liverpool fans that if you sign Caicedo, you win the league. That sort of gives away our predictions, but it would have been a fantastic move. I think he would have fitted in with the team that they've got under Klopp as well. It would have been just magnificent. It just would have been the perfect fit. I think Chelsea they're a complex side. Maybe they've got a really good manager now, so maybe there may be some stability with Pochettino, but really they're a complicated outfit, and there's always moving parts, and with the owner as well, you're never quite sure exactly what's going on. I think with Liverpool there is a heritage, there's a history, and at the moment with Klopp, who I believe it will probably be his last season, it would have been a fantastic swan song for Klopp as well, because I think with Caicedo, that's the last piece in the jigsaw. Certainly in terms of, I think, the attack and the midfield. Maybe defence still needs one or two pieces, but certainly in terms of the midfield, it would have been fantastic with the acquisitions already made. I mean, he's got McAllister, a former Brighton man as well. So it again, it would have made much more sense in my mind for Caicedo to go. I just don't know what's going on. I think this is in terms of drama, fantastic. In terms of, I think what I wouldn't sort of say despise. Despise is far too strong a word, but this is really what I think. There's a certain sickness with football, and perhaps today embodies that sickness. It's quite vulgar. It's one club playing against another club. Whether Liverpool are serious, I don't know. Are they serious? I mean, it's sort of, I mean, you make a really good
111
you make a
million
really
would
good
suggest
argument
so.
because, in a sense, has the player almost committed to Chelsea? So therefore, if he's almost committed to Chelsea, Liverpool might be just saying, well, look, we'll put in a bid. We know that Chelsea are absolutely adamant that they want this player. They'll match the bid because they will match the bid because already I think there's talk that Tyler Adams was almost a done deal. Now, albeit that's only 20 million, but at least that's a 20 million that they're thinking, well, look, we can't afford now to spend 20 million on Adams. We've got to use everything that we have on Caicedo. So obviously they're paying more than what they wanted to. Liverpool might turn around and say, well, look, we've not got the player, but certainly it's messed up Chelsea's budget. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily that's in a sense Liverpool's intention here. I think they want the player. They just, in the early part of the summer when the Chelsea were doing all the running, I think they wanted to make it appear as though Chelsea were the only club in the running, and I don't think it suits teams right now to be in a bidding war with Chelsea. You saw what happened in January. Arsenal were doing all the running for Mikhailo Mudryk. You had the player making multiple messages on Instagram and what have you, talking about Arsenal, captioning, fluttering his eyelashes and what have you. I mean, he wanted Arsenal, and in the end, what happened was Chelsea made a huge bid. Even though Arsenal had a few bids rejected, and he ended up going to Chelsea. And
Yeah.
and I think what Liverpool saw in that is that, look, you've got to. I think they just simply told Brighton that if it looks like you're getting close to a deal, let us know. We'll decide then whether we want to get involved or not. Equally, if it looks like Chelsea are out of the picture and you're getting close to the point where you are looking to finalize this saga, and that's exactly what happened. Brighton submitted a Thursday night midnight deadline to say, right, it's now or never. All bids are welcome. Highest bidder wins. Liverpool's was the highest bid. So I think Liverpool, with respect, played it well. You make a very good point, Ayub, though, about how over time he's committed his. It seems he's committed to Chelsea. I mean, look, he committed to Arsenal in January, so I'm not. It's not one of those. I also heard someone say today, "Well, it's the allure of London." I said that we pick and choose that narrative all so easily. I mean, one thing is where Declan Rice is born and raised in London. He's grown up there. He's got family there. He's got friends there. That may have played a part in staying
I think
at
it
Arsenal.
does play a part. I mean,
but
because
he
with
doesn't.
international players, because there is an allure of London. I mean, I certainly know that lots of European players were always enticed by the capital. So I don't know. But in this case, I think you're right. I don't think it's a major factor or a contributory factor.
Exactly. He's not in London right now, is he? Out playing for Brighton. And yes, London always has some allure, but not stopped all these superstars heading to Manchester to play for Manchester City. I mean, look, I'm sorry, I'm not having that. I mean, I just think it's come down. So the worry from a Liverpool perspective, just to finish off, my point would have been that by not being so actively engaged in the deal, let's say, you've allowed Chelsea to speak to the player to speak to Chelsea, get some sort of, look, this is where we see you and this is how we're going to build around you and all the rest of it. And there's some sort of, obviously, commitment that's been built up over time. And that's what, to your point, it seems the player suggesting he only wants Chelsea because the salaries will be comparable, right, in terms of Chelsea and Liverpool. I don't think that's the issue. And clearly Liverpool's is the higher bid. The final point that I just want to make is you're absolutely right, Ayub. He was tailor-made for that Liverpool team. And for me, just as a neutral observer, yes, okay, I support Arsenal. But for me, I look at two things. I look at which club is the more stable. That would be Liverpool. Which club has the more proven manager? Even though we both like Poch, it's Jurgen Klopp. Which club has been more consistent in recent times, shall we say? That again would be Liverpool. Which team has arguably where can I go where I'm the final piece? We could win titles if I'm that final piece. They've revamped that entire midfield. The front line is fairly potent. You expect the resurgent Darwin Núñez, Salah, Jota, Gakpo, Diaz, plethora of options. The middle, Szoboszlai, McAllister, they've revamped the entire midfield, revamped the age of the midfield, and he's that final piece covering Trent Alexander-Arnold on that side. He's an incredible athlete. It seems the perfect, and you're absolutely right, Ewan. This is why I thought today was such an incredible day. I looked at him for Liverpool and I thought he takes them from thinking just about top four to, without a shadow of a doubt, gazumping some of the others to really push Manchester City for that title. Absolutely. So I just think I'm a little disappointed that it's not come to pass because I just think he's an incredible player and I could see him fit at Liverpool. High press, high octane football, him covering the pitch, Liverpool being able to press again. I could definitely see a resurgent Liverpool. He'll be great for Chelsea if he goes there. But Chelsea, there's so much turnover of staff, players, style, chemistry. There's so many question marks. So I just have to believe Liverpool was the better project, for want of a better phrase. But incredible saga, still not finalised. So we'll see.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've got a feeling now. It just sort of seems again that Chelsea probably will match the bid. And really, I think if they match the bid, I can't see Liverpool sort of saying, right, okay, we're going to get into a bidding war. We're going to increase because it's just going to follow on. So I think they probably might, if they match the bid, I think Liverpool will resign themselves with the fact that it's probably Chelsea's player. But absolutely dramatic, very exciting, and it's in a sense why we love football.
Yeah, absolutely. The stories. It's the
Yeah,
stories.
absolutely. Right, the next topic, we're about an hour and a half away, I think, from the start of the Premier League 2023-2024. So it's the perfect time to make our predictions. So how do we want to do it? Shall we start with the bottom three first?
Well, I think you are our resident relegation expert, so I mean it would be rude for me to
It
go
certainly will
first.
be, yeah. So
first
I'm
on
going
this.
to make it nice and quick. I mean, I've already talked about the bottom two are a done deal. I think everybody that you speak to will say Luton and Sheffield United in that order. Luton, I've already said they will not win one game of football. Sheffield United,
you're holding on to that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sheffield United aren't going to be too far away. Even though they've bought a decent player today, Hamer from Coventry, but he's a championship player. But I think he'll do okay. He'll do well. Now comes the tricky bit because I think that third spot, I mean, I've thought about it. I think after thinking about it, I'd like it to be Bournemouth, to be honest, for a couple of reasons. Not football, well, football related, but it's more personal. They've got the manager that we were courting. Max Aarons was on his way to a medical at Leeds, and they gazumped our interest or our sort of attempt at signing Max Aarons. So I've got a tremendous amount of hatred for Bournemouth, but I think they're just a little bit too good. I think it's going to be Wolves. There's lots of turmoil at Wolves at this moment in time. They've lost key players. They've lost a tremendous manager as well. So for me, bottom three, Luton by a country mile. Sheffield United as well. They probably might win the odd game here and there, but they're going to be miles off as well. And Wolves, I think Wolves this time, there's too many changes, too much turmoil, and in the Premier League, you can't do that and get away with it. So that's my bottom three.
Not a bad shout. And I think at some point I would like you to maybe talk about what we've discussed offline about Luton Town, about their preparations for this season, because you've spoken about this quite well offline, Ayub, and I think at the appropriate time we should discuss how Luton are preparing in terms of not just this season, but in future years as well. My relegation, I have Luton survive. No, I'm only joking.
No, that will be that. If they survive, it will. It sort of completely throws my my theory out of the water.
Well, can I ask you a quick question? If Luton Town survive, is it a bigger story than Leicester City winning the Premier League title?
Absolutely, absolutely, it will be. It will be. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it will be. But we'll touch upon this as you said. We've spoken offline. I've got my theory on what Luton, and in a sense, I mean, I absolutely am. I'm making them look the most ridiculous side in the Premier League. But there is, I've certainly commended their owner based on what I think he's trying to do. But that we'll discuss another time.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We'll discuss that when they win their first Premier League game. We'll pencil that in for 2026, according to you, anyway. No, look, I have Luton Town finishing 20th. Nothing against Luton Town, but I do think they're the weakest of the Premier League teams. Their summer transfer kind of incomings, outgoings would suggest that look, they will find it difficult, right? I think the one thing they've got in their favour, if I can clutch at any straws, is that there are a lot of other weaker teams, you would argue. I think the Premier League is quite, I would say, top heavy and then bottom heavy. There's not a whole bunch of middling teams, of course there are, but just its competition is quite fierce at the top, but also then very much at the bottom, where you've got a number of clubs that you think on another season would get relegated. You spoke about it with George the other day about timing, right? And Burnley, who may still struggle, relatively speaking, but may well get away with it. I have the same three teams that you: Luton Town 20th, Sheffield United finishing 19th. I think most observers do, as you rightly pointed out. I was caught between Forest, Wolves, and Bournemouth for that last spot. I think Bournemouth, I don't know. I think maybe just you're right. Let's see how the manager fares. I think he will find it challenging. That team does need a bit of a refresh. Gary O'Neill definitely got a tune out of them at the back end of the season. So let's see how the new manager fares. Give him plenty of chance. Forest again, I think they might struggle. They struggled last year. They got away with it in the end. But I just wonder whether now teams have got a feel for them a little bit. I think they will struggle. But Wolves, you're absolutely right. You lose players like Neves, who've been there for a number of years. You lose players like Moutinho, Jimenez, even though he wasn't prolific, and he probably wasn't the player he once was after that clash of heads at the Emirates Stadium.
Yeah.
But you lose that, and then you lose. I think they lost Collins as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then the manager. I mean, that's a lot. Adam Traore, I think, left the club as well. Obviously, I think his contract was out. So that's a lot of upheaval for a club that, yes, has a lot of incomings, outgoings normally, but they were already flirting with relegation. Yes, Lopetegui did a brilliant job, but then to lose him tells you already that he didn't quite fancy the job in terms of what it would have perhaps meant for his reputation, battling with Wolves, trying to keep them up. So I have Wolves just about getting relegated ahead of with Forest, Bournemouth, and maybe your Burnleys and your Evertons, maybe just surviving. Yeah. So that that concludes the bottom three. I think that was fairly straightforward. We both aligned there. Now for the top four. This is what
I'll let you go first.
Well, I'll do it in terms of I'll go from fourth to first if that's okay.
That's the way it should be always.
If you remember a few episodes ago, we talked about what storylines we were looking for in the Premier League campaign, right? And I spoke about how I believe this next season will be one of the most competitive, but also most compelling. I think there's so many clubs at the top end that have high aspirations. Manchester City will see anything but a Premier League title, fourth in a row for them. They will see that as a failure. Arsenal will be looking to kick on. They obviously just fell short last season. Manchester United, another year into the Eric Ten Hag project, will be definitely looking to challenge for the title. And Liverpool, especially if they manage to get Caicedo, which may look unlikely at the minute, but if it had happened, then absolutely they would have felt like, right, we're right in this title race. And I think they've got enough equity in the bank to still feel that way with if they maneuver themselves from this latest episode as well. Chelsea, you'd expect them to improve. I mean, without doubt, they will improve. Spurs now, obviously a bit of a challenge. They've got a bit of a rebuilding job. But then Newcastle, Aston Villa, Brighton still led by Roberto De Zerbi, who was asked today about Moises Caicedo, and he remarked, "I've already forgotten about him." So he's right on brand.
I like his style.
I was gonna say he's right on brand. Is our Roberto? He's quite consistent. He's feisty. No, look, I think it's going to be a fairly tight title race. Actually, I think there could be quite a number of twists and turns. I don't think there'll be a team that clearly separates themselves from the pack, or two teams that separate themselves from the pack. I think this could be very competitive, and I always judge it based on head-to-heads as well to some extent. So I visualize, what does this United team look like if they play Man City twice? What does this Arsenal team look like if they play Man City twice? Normally Arsenal lose, but you kind of visualize Newcastle. They've improved. I've got Man United finishing fourth. And I do reserve the right to change because there's still a few transfer stories, right? For sure. Look, we should probably revise these when the summer transfer window ends. I mean, Arsenal might sign Mbappe, so that might change things. But I've got Man United finishing fourth in what is going to be a very tightly contested title race. So whether they'll be in the title race, I expect them to challenge. I do. I think they've made huge improvements. Mason Mount, Casemiro, another year in chemistry. They've got the young fella up front, Højlund. Yes, he's got an injury at the moment, but you'd like to think they will improve over time. Obviously, the goalkeeper should make a big difference as well, especially in the offensive style. I have United finishing fourth. I have Man City finishing third.
Wow.
There's just something about Man City, and I mean, it's not, I swear, to be kind of clickbait and all that.
This is yeah. I mean, explain yourself.
I will explain myself
because that is outstanding in terms of prediction. So tell me, explain to me why.
When they are played 13, won 13, we might have to revisit this. But no,
you'll
look,
have to revisit this.
I will. I'm sure you'll pull me up on it.
I will do.
Again, I preface my comments by saying this is not going to be your typical third place team finishing 12 points behind. I really do think this could be one of those seasons when we are looking at the Premier League table at the 30 game mark, and we may well not even be able to rule out the team that's fourth winning the title. I genuinely think that that's what we're going to see. The reason why I have City maybe just falling short, it's none of the. I'm not going to give you the historical statistics. No team's ever won it 4 titles in a row. I don't believe in that. If there's a team that's going to do it, it's going to be this team.
Yeah,
they've got an absolute. They've got clearly the country's best striker now that Harry Kane's moved on. Haaland should score another bucket load. I just look at it and I think Gundogan, there's something about him, that magic potion, him leaving. He had what I call this kind of intuition, just these moments, and he definitely proved that over the last couple of seasons. Him leaving, Mahrez leaving, how do they replace that? They've got Guardiola, another centre back. They were fairly solid anyway at the back in terms of their playing style, with Stones, Ake, and Diaz. They've got Guardiola now there as well. There's just something about that team. Another year on, an injury to De Bruyne, he picks up a few niggles here and there. I think those kind of injuries this time might just prove a little bit consequential. I also saw how Pep Guardiola complained about the injury time, the added injury time rules, and I just wonder whether some of that was him understanding how many minutes his team played as well last year in terms of all competitions at the highest level. Does he sense that there could be some sort of rollover effect and the team having to play lots of minutes? You would think that would suit the better teams. More footballing time gives you more chance to win games. I have them just finishing third, again in a very tightly contested table. I have Liverpool finishing second. I still think they'll be able to maneuver. I love that front line. I think Darwin Núñez, I know he's a big favourite of yours for next season. I think there will be a resurgence there. I think Salah will have another big season. He had a fairly good season numbers-wise last year, but I think the fact they'll be able to relatively rest some of their starters in the Europa League, focus on the league. Yes, you've got that Thursday, Sunday turnaround, which is never ideal. But I think if they pivot away from the Caicedo deal, if it falls through for them and get some extra, I think they can do it. I think Arnold will have another big season. I do feel like he's one of my dark horses for potential PFA Player of the Year, but let's see how that rocks. And they've definitely improved that midfielder. You spoke so well about that last week. And I think Arsenal will win the Premier League title. I was not gonna do it because I'm as objective as it comes at you. But let me potentially count the ways why I think Arsenal may do it this year. Everything they've done this summer, or the majority of the things they've done this summer, have left me with some question marks. I would say the majority. And what I mean by that is bringing in Havertz potentially as that left-sided midfielder when he didn't play that position for Chelsea. How is that going to work? Arsenal have a very 4-1 type formation here. It's Partey with 2 others pushed forward. So Havertz bringing him in there primarily for the midfield role. Question mark. Bringing in a second goalkeeper on loan with an obligation. I think it's an option to buy. In David Raya. Does it really work? Peter Schmeichel spoke about it very well about what that does. It's the one position where the goalkeeper needs to feel like I've got the confidence of my coach. So very rarely do you have 2 elite goalkeepers at the same club. So just another question mark. They've clearly strengthened Declan Rice. There's no questions about it. He's a top player. But he's playing him currently in a position he's not played before, ahead of Partey. So will he end up as the 6? As a 6, he's, in my opinion, as good as they come. That's just my opinion. As an 8 or that kind of Xhaka role, you'll notice, again, I spoke about it in the Community Shield, he kept drifting backwards, which is his kind of default setting. And that kind of just upset the rhythm a little bit of Arsenal's offensive output, because Xhaka knows how to receive the ball side on in between the lines. But there's just something about the coach, about the team. They've strengthened with Timber. I think if they can, and this is the number one thing I'll ask for from Arsenal, if they can commit to a defensive mindset, which is we're not letting teams create opportunities against us, we're going to harass them, and we're going to play the same attacking football with Martinelli doing his good work on the left-hand side, Saka, I would argue, a world-class player now on the right-hand side. I just think in amongst a tightly contested league, it may well be their year where they can just get over the line. I don't say it with any great deal of conviction because I still have some question marks, especially their inability recently to prevent teams from creating chances against them. Forget goals, creating chances against them. So they need to kind of get that over my dead body attitude with the defending. But I feel that they may just get over the line this year.
Well, it's all about opinions, and those are your opinions. Interesting. I obviously, I think the consensus, I mean, unless you happen to be an Arsenal fan, is that you had a glorious opportunity last season, and maybe that was going to be one of those rare opportunities where if you fluffed your lines, it was going to be a long time before you got that opportunity again. But you never know. I mean, I think they're a better side than they were last year. So certainly, it's they're doing their utmost to be in there in the fight. Now that's yours. That's your top four. Interesting, as I said, I'm surprised with the Arsenal. Normally, I'd sort of say you make a good argument, and it's an argument. I'm going to just say it's an argument.
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough.
My thoughts.
Yes.
Number 4, the Arsenal. And I'm not going to sort of say too much. I've just briefly sort of said it. I think last year was their opportunity. It was a golden opportunity. And I think they're not going to get an opportunity such as that, even though they're an excellent side, excellently coached. They've improved. You've talked about some of the players that they've introduced or have bought. They are going to enhance the team, but I think fourth, Manchester United third. I think they've got a great coach. They were finding an identity towards the end of the season. They were playing good stuff. They're much better this season in terms of personnel. Ten Hag is he understands the league. He understands the players that he's got at his disposal. He's got a lot more control at the football club. So I think they will certainly be a stronger proposition, and they will finish third. Second, and it's the points that you said. There was a player that you mentioned, and I think he's absolutely key. He maybe slipped under the radar in previous years. Last year, certainly, I think he was. Everybody noticed him. Gundogan. He was key. He was critical. A lot of people talk about KDB, Haaland, but to me, that is a massive loss, and it's a loss that I think they'll find difficult to cope with. So second is going to be Manchester City, which then means for me, the team that is going to win the league. I talked about Caicedo, Liverpool, they win the league. I think even without Caicedo, Liverpool will win the league. And my reasons for it is, you can have question marks over the defence, and yes, I think they still need improving at the back. But in terms of midfield, maybe they still need one or two players in the middle of the park.
Yeah,
but in
sure.
terms of offensive, they are absolutely. They have 5 players that I think in terms of a package of 5 players, there is no other team in the world that have a better attacking 5. Ultimately, some people say if you score goals or if you've got goal scorers, you give yourself the best chance to win trophies, to win leagues. And I think that's the reason why I'm giving. I think with the midfield that they have now, it's much improved. But I think in terms of the array of riches that they have going forward, that's what's going to give them the league. And I honestly think that they will win the league. With the team that they have now, maybe it's going to be a tight squeeze, but I'm absolutely convinced they're going to get maybe 2 or 3 more players, and that will be definitely Liverpool for the league. So at the moment, as it stands, I'm going to go 4. It's going to be the Arsenal, Manchester United, Man City second. My favourites for the league is Liverpool.
I won't hold you to this because, again, we'll probably revisit it when the transfer window ends. But what's your, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but what's your gap between the top 4 teams?
It's going to be a cigarette paper. Really, it will be. You're absolutely right. I think in terms of how competitive it will be, it's. I don't think it's going to be sort of anything more than 5 or 6 points between number 1 and number 4. It really will be. I think we are I'm expecting the most exciting Premier League imaginable in terms of the top four. It really will be. I think the games between each other will be absolutely pivotal. So, and even games against, I suppose, other sides as well. It
Yeah.
will just be that you cannot afford to drop points. And then when you play each other, those will be defining moments. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be so competitive. There's not going to be a quarter given. But I've just got this feeling that, and there's another reason why as well. Maybe it's the romantic side in me, but I think it will be Klopp's last season, and I think he wants a last hurrah. Uh, I'm sure people within the club may probably know. And I'm sure Klopp, being the guy that he is, perhaps he might sort of convey this message to his players. And if he does convey it to his players, I think the love, the respect that Klopp has, they'll run through a brick wall for him. So if he has said that this is my last season, I'm absolutely convinced that the players will give it everything to make sure that Klopp he has a fitting finale, and a fitting finale would be Jurgen Klopp to lift the Premier League trophy and then say goodbye or auf Wiedersehen.
Oh, he doesn't. Yeah, absolutely. We've got the same four, just in different orders. So that'll be interesting. And look, we're both aligned. It's going to be close. It's going to be tight. And yeah, I think I do agree with your narrative about Arsenal, right? That was a great opportunity last year. But they've got to prove it again, right? And they've got to prove that they can go again and do the things necessary, which is be hard to beat. Don't let teams create chances against you, and still be as potent as they once were, and not let some of the scars of last year come through. Liverpool, yeah, good shout. I know you're high on them, and you're right about that front five elite. So, no, fascinating. And I think it's going to be tight. That's why I wanted the nuance of just asking about the points gap, because it sounds maybe quite bold to say Manchester City will just finish third, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be by much. So it's not your quintessential team finishing maybe 12, 13 points behind. So
It's going to be.
let's see.
I'm so excited. Honestly, always, I am so excited for this season. I think it promises to be. I suppose a lot of times we always talk about the Premier League, especially at the start of the season. Everybody's excited, but I genuinely think that this is probably going to be the most exciting, the tightest Premier League that we've had. So it's certainly, if you're a football fan, it's going to be fantastic. The best show in town.
Agreed. Absolutely.
And right, we're talking about leagues. Shall we have a little chat about the Fantasy Premier League?
But we should. I think the deadline's in 2 minutes. So
And you know what's happened with me, as expected. I've fluffed my line straight away, so I'm not going to be able to pick my side. But at the end of the day, we've got an expert here. So when we talk about the Fantasy Premier League, it has to be Uwais. So go on, you take the floor.
Well, we've agreed that you'll be joining next week. Yeah,
I certainly will be. Yes,
and it will be good because I think that's a nice segment to discuss. Adds a little different layer to the weekly games, right? So we'll be discussing over the coming weeks about just general FPL tips, fixtures, and what have you. And maybe we should end this episode just with a few quick fire predictions of the weekend's action. But just very quickly, I just wanted to cover through maybe 2 or 3 key points, about just 3 key points as I saw it heading into the FPL season this year. Number one, I think, is about risks. I think if you're going to take risks and be bold, it's best done at the start of the season. And the reason is very simple. You've got more weeks to rectify any potential issues or any potential mistakes. And you also have a wild card, which you can play at any time until December end. So basically, if you see in the first 4 weeks certain trends develop, you see, all right, okay, so Sheffield United maybe might score a few goals, and this player's doing well for Brentford, or interesting, this player's playing from midfield, but actually now playing striker for Aston Villa, whatever it might be. There's certain trends that develop early, so you can take a few risks early doors, knowing if you pay attention to the trends after the international break, after game week 4, whatever it may be, you can use a wild card. You can change your entire team. So I think if you're going to take some risks, take them early doors. Just for a bit of information, I've taken a few risks, which I'll come on to shortly, which you'll enjoy. But yeah, that's what I would say. You've got the idea, you've got the help of a wild card. If you're going to play it safe early, that's fine as well. I think playing safe to try and just get points on the board to then take risks afterwards, I think that's fine. You want to get as many points early doors as possible. So you shouldn't be focusing too much on your private leagues. You should be simply focusing on getting your points. But again, it's okay to be bold. You can take the wild card shortly after game week 3, game week 4, whenever it may be, without many price rises, so you can pretty much get the prices locked. So that's the first risk, I would say. Secondly, I was talking about risks. In terms of striker options, Ayub, and you'll appreciate this, you don't have to be playing the game. Erling Haaland, you get 100 million to spend, Ayub, and Erling Haaland is the price of 14 million. 14 million, yeah? So that's a significant amount when you've got 15 spots on your squad roster to fill. So one of those players commanding a fee of 14 million. Now he's worth it. He scored a bucket load. But 14 million, the next striker in terms of transfer fee is a player that's currently in Munich. That's Harry Kane. That's 10. That's 10.5 million, 12.5, I should say. So he won't be obviously playing in the Premier League this season. The next striker there afterwards is Tony, although all these next players are at 8 million. So Tony, Gabriel Jesus, Watkins, Wilson, they're all at 8 million. So Tony's unavailable because of his ban. Jesus unavailable because of his minor knee surgery. So the gap between Haaland, the next available striker you've got is Watkins at 8 million or a Wilson at 8 million. And that discrepancy means that most people take on Haaland because why wouldn't you? He's scoring a bucket load. But it then means that your teams often pick themselves because everyone's going for Haaland and there's not much else there afterwards in the forward department. So you're then just your midfielders, you're always getting big hitters. So your similar FPL teams will end up with a Saka, with a Rashford, with a Odegaard, with a De Bruyne, with a Salah. So that's the big frustration for me, that there's this big discrepancy from the striker's position, where Haaland is your obvious choice, but then everybody else there afterwards is a bit of a budget enabler, which allows you to kind of really buffer your midfield. So what happens is you get very similar private league teams. So it's not much fun. So I think that's something that's a bit of a source of frustration. Hence, alluding to my first point, I've not picked Haaland in my team because I'm thinking, well, if he scores a hat-trick against Burnley, fine, I'll have to rectify it at some point. But I've got time. I've got time this season to fix that. So I've not taken Haaland because I thought A, was a bit boring, and B, let's just see how long I can go before Haaland really separates himself from everyone else, which might not be too long, might just be 2 hours actually, given that they play on Friday night. And the last point that I've got is something to think about. We discussed it last week, injury time. There's going to be more game time now, right? With injury time being added on, which means that defenders who mainly get points for clean sheets, there's a greater likelihood that there'll be less clean sheets, right? The games are going to be longer. The action's going to be longer. Hence, fatigue kicks in, and that's when maybe goals happen, right? We saw that at the World Cup. So if you know that there's perhaps going to be more goals, why would you spend maybe a lot of money on your defense knowing that actually there's a greater chance for them to lose their clean sheet points? So that's a question for a lot of FPL managers to consider. Do I spend a lot of money on my defenders like a Alexander Arnold and a Reece James and other big heavyweights in terms of the defense, knowing that actually the games are actually going to be longer? So I've got longer to protect my clean sheet points. The moment a team scores, bang, the clean sheet's gone. Now Arnold can get you offensive points. But I think it's just something for FPL managers to consider. With games that are going to be longer now with the added injury time, should we consider maybe spending less on your defenders and therefore enabling you to really buffer up that midfield and strike, even though the striker options are limited? So those are the few things I would ask FPL managers to have a look at. But yeah, it's started. That deadline has passed, so everyone's teams will have been submitted. Hopefully the server didn't crash of the FPL game, which often happens. So yeah, wish everyone well. We've had a lot of people joining our Just Onside League, which is appreciated. So we'll see how we go, and hopefully we'll have one more next week with Ayub joining us as well.
Oh, I will be. I mean, it's something. I mean, I must confess that I love my football, but I've never been very good at Fantasy Premier League. So therefore, there's always that sort of reluctance to join because, in a sense, I always give up after 3 or 4 weeks. But I will promise, obviously, as the fact that we have a league. then it's incumbent on me that I will join. So I will definitely join. But some really interesting points. I suppose I didn't think about that, but now that you've mentioned it, because yeah, games are going to be 8, 9, 10 minutes of added time, and there are perhaps, if the legs are going, there's always that likelihood that somebody's going to concede a late goal. When perhaps if it's 92 minutes, 93 minutes, it sort of you're very much focused. But that extra 7 or 8 minutes doesn't seem that many, but really when you're talking about added time, it probably could have a crucial difference. Right, we've had quite an exciting show, quite a long show.
Yep.
We've talked about a number of things. So as always, I ask our loyal viewers and those who are joining us, because it's an expanding family. We have, I think, before we started recording, 192 subscribers, so we're quite close to the 200 mark. So can I ask, as always, please smash a like, subscribe, share with your friends, with your many friends. I last time sort of said that those who don't have any friends, but I'm sure all of you have many friends, so I'll share with them. And until the next time, stay onside. One of these days I will get it right, but don't stray off. Is that the word?
Correct.
Right. Okay. So until the next time, take care.